Welcome to College Football Roundup, where I am Chicago Sports Network and I'm joined here by American Football Network. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. As it says, we are trying to reach 100 subscribers by the start of the college football season, as we seem to be getting closer and closer as spring football dates are coming up, and we talk about the ACC here. So how are you doing, Lincoln? And what are your thoughts as we enter into some ACC spring football talk?
Oh yeah, like you said, make sure you check out my channel, American Football Network, his channel, Chicago Sports Network. Help us hit 100 subs by the start of the 2023 college football season. We're going to be bringing you guys preview each of our preview and predictions for most of, if not all of the Power 5 teams, both on our channel. And we'll also do some stuff over on this channel as well. When it comes into the actual season, we're going to be doing some game streams over here. So make sure you guys check all that stuff out. Also, like you said, comment your thoughts and opinions down below. I'm excited for the football season as, like you said, it's getting closer and closer. Spring football just getting started up here recently, so I'm excited for that. So yeah, we'll have to definitely do some more videos like this and get some schedule breakdowns. But let's go ahead and get started with our video here today. So we're going to give you our guys' power rankings and of the ACC teams, and then we're also going to do, just kind of in a little overview of each team, and kind of one of the biggest questions going into spring football for each team.
So I will start with my number 15 team in the ACC. So number 15 for me, this was a really hard decision, actually. There's a lot of teams that I think deserve that number 15 spot. But what I am going to do is I'm going to put Boston College there. Boston College really looked, like genuinely awful last year, if one of the worst, if not possibly the worst Power 5 team in all of college football, with Kansas having a good year last year and Oregon State playing well. And obviously Kansas State isn't bad anymore. Vanderbilt won a couple of games. Boston College may have been the worst Power 5 team in college football. So you lost Phil Jakovic, who was probably your best player outside of Zay Flowers, who you also lose to the draft. Yeah, this is not a good team. Jeff Hafley's probably on the hot seat and probably going to be fired after this year, in my opinion. Who's your number 15?
So it's actually 14.
Or 14, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but for my number 14 team, I am going with Virginia. They kind of similar to Boston College, what you were talking about. They lose pretty much all their receiving threats. They also lose their quarterback in Brennan Armstrong. They were terrible last year. I think they won 2 or 3 games last year. And so now it comes in to the, who's going to be the quarterback for you. And they recruited a 3-star quarterback. I'm trying to think of his name. What's his name? Anthony Colandrea, something like that. He was the number 70th quarterback in the nation in his class of 2023. So he'll be the quarterback most likely for them. And like I said, he's a 3-star. He's coming in. They didn't do good under Elliott last year, so they definitely have to turn some stuff around. On defense, they did
Anthony Caladrona out of Lakewood and St. Petersburg, Florida. So
yeah, they held the defense held teams to 4.97 yards a play last year, and so they do get 6 starters back on the defense, so that may be something that's in their advantage, but as far as the offense goes, that's what's really got to improve for them, and that's why I have them at 14 for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. At number 14, number 13, I do have the Virginia Cavaliers. I think that basically exactly what you said. This is not a good team. I think that they're a little bit better then Boston College, just because I think that they have a couple more weapons. And it's the second year under Tony Elliott, so you would think to see some improvement. So I'm going to put them a little bit ahead of Boston College because Jeff Hafley has shown that he has not been able to put up a great product at BC. But I think that this is a team that's not in a good situation going into next year. So who is your number 13 team?
My number 13 team, we both just switched them. I'm going with Boston College as my number 13 team. Obviously, the biggest thing with Boston College is, can they fix the offensive line? They had one of the worst offenses and one of the worst offensive lines in the country last year. And Jeff Hafley made some changes. And so they really got to rebuild that that offensive lineup. Their quarterback is probably going to be Emmett Moorhead, the redshirt sophomore for them. So we'll see what he can do. But I think it will be good to kind of get some new pieces in there. They got a new offensive coordinator, Rob Chudzinski. So to get him in there, and then, like I said, get a new quarterback in there. Obviously, you don't want to have to get a new wide receiver one. You'd like to have kept Zay Flowers. But, you got to get that offensive line better. I don't see much improvement, but I do think that I like Hafley's moves a little bit here. And I do think that that Boston College I have them as the 13th team.
Yeah, at number 12, I have the Virginia Tech Hokies. Virginia just does not have some good football this year. Old Dominion isn't any good. Virginia's not good. Virginia Tech not any better.
Old Dominion
Brent
will still probably beat Virginia Tech, though.
They probably can. VMI, the Virginia Military Academy, could probably beat Virginia Tech. Maybe Virginia Tech really struggles with beating in-state rivals. Brent Pry does not seem to be the candidate. I never really liked the hire personally. I don't think that he's going to be the best candidate for the job. Didn't have a great first year. I think that they're a little bit better than Virginia. Just they have more talent. But other than that, they just don't have a lot of great players. I have Virginia Tech at number 12.
At number 12, for me, I also have Virginia Tech, and I think our number 11 teams are probably going to be similar as well. I just, like you said, I don't like this Virginia Tech team. They're not very talented. They don't have any playmakers. They don't have a good quarterback. They just have absolutely nothing going their way for them. And like you said, Old Dominion, VMI, they could probably all beat Virginia Tech any week of the season. So I like you said, it's not going to be good football in Virginia this year, and Virginia Tech's not helping that case at all. I think they're a little bit better than Boston College. I think they have a little bit better of a coaching staff than Boston College does, and that's really what led me to put them ahead of them. It's just the coaching staff, to be honest.
Yeah. So for number 11, I have the Syracuse Orange. Syracuse, Garrett Schrader should be back this year.
I think so.
I think he has 1 year of eligibility left. The problem that I have is that Dino Babers, I get that they went 6-0 with Garrett Schrader as their QB, but it's not. I'm not a big fan of Dino Babers. I think that he got a little burst from being able to have a lot of good players on that team that were seniors, high-level guys. But once you lost Schrader, it was just all down the tube. I'm not a big fan of Syracuse going into this year, so I have them out of the top 10 of the ACC. So that is my number 11 team.
So my number 11 team is going to be the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. I didn't like the hire as Brent Key, elevating him to the full-time head coach he was the interim. It did all right under him, did better than they did under Jeff Collins, but I did not like that hire. But he did bring in offensive coordinator Buster Faulkner. And that's really kind of, what everybody's wondering about Georgia Tech. What is their offense going to look like under him? I believe they still have Jeff Sims. And they also added transfer quarterback Haynes King from Texas A&M, so that was a solid get for them at quarterback. So we'll see what they can do. I think that they're going to be improved from last year, but I still don't see them being improved too much. I still don't think they're going to be a good team.
Yeah, for me personally, um, I'm going to go with at number 10. This is really a back and forth for me, but I'm going to go with a little bit of a bold decision here. I know it's springtime, so I'm going to be a little bit bold. I'm going to go with Pitt at number 10. And here's my reasoning is this. They got Phil Dracovic to come in and play quarterback this year. And Slovic isn't there this year, right?
I don't think so.
I think he
He-
graduated.
I think he
Because
transferred somewhere else, didn't he?
Yeah, he may have transferred somewhere else. I can never keep up with the transfer portal at this point. They transfer so much. He transferred to
Yeah, he
BYU.
transferred to
Remember,
BYU. Yeah,
we had that little talk about. Yeah,
that's right.
that is such a weird switch from going to Southern Cal to Pitt to
Yeah,
BYU. Those are like three opposite
yeah.
universities. But Phil Jakovic, not a big fan. He played well that one year in Boston College, and maybe he can revive his career and going to Pitt. I don't know. Maybe there's something there. Obviously, he was a highly talented guy out of high school, went to Notre Dame, got stuck behind Ian Book, and then threw a little hissy fit over it. So I'm not a big fan of Pitt. I think that they lost a lot, and they just haven't really um, developed any offensive pieces. Their defense should be good. It generally is good. But offensively, I think that they're going to struggle to be able to put up points. So that's why I'm going to have at number 10 the Pitt Panthers.
Yeah, I agree with that about Pitt because I mean we even saw, they did develop somebody at running back last year in Israel Abanikanda, and then now he leaves as well. But I do have Pitt a little higher up than you do at for me at number 10. I'm going with Syracuse. Um, so Garrett Schrader is not participating during the spring because of that injury. Um, but they have a lot to replace. They have to replace Sean Tucker. They also have 3 starters on their offensive line to replace. Um, but on the defense, they do return 8 starters, including Michael Jones, their best linebacker. And so the biggest thing is both their cornerbacks from the defense are need to be replaced. As Deuce Chestnut transferred to LSU, and Jihad Carter transferred to Ohio State, and Garrett Williams is going to the NFL draft. So we'll see what happens with that. I think Syracuse is a team with some talented defensive pieces. They have a solid quarterback, but they got to figure the offensive side out is what I think the problem is. And I don't think their pass defense is going to save them like it did last year and be 14th in the country.
Yeah. So for my number 9 team, I'm personally a little bit higher on the Brett Key hire. I'm going to have at number 9 Georgia Tech. I'm a little bit higher. I think he played well. I think he got the team behind him. They went 5-7 last year, went 4-4 in conference play, and that had nothing to do with Jeff Collins. I think that between or actually, Jeff Sims is gone. Haynes King is the quarterback next year,
Okay.
at least according to our lads. So generally, I don't think Georgia Tech has anybody that's like outstanding. But I think that going into next year, they have a couple of players that I think can play well. Last couple of years, they've had pretty good running back play and good offensive line play. But I'm going to have Georgia Tech at number 9, mostly just because I think Brett Key is a little bit better of a hire than Lincoln thinks he is. I'm a little bit higher on him. But other than that, I think that Georgia Tech, they're going to probably struggle throughout the year.
Yeah, I think they probably will struggle for the most part. And so my number 9 team, I'm going to have the Miami Hurricanes there. Just not a big fan of Miami and what they have down there. They did get Cristobal did bring in 2 new coordinators, offensive coordinator Shannon Dawson and defensive coordinator Lance Goudry. Um, Tyler Van Dyke's back, but he did not look good last year. And I know he didn't play a whole lot, but he missed 6 games. He didn't play a lot because he missed 6 games with an injury shoulder, which is also a concern coming in. Um, in 2021, he won ACC Rookie of the Year, but then last year just was not very good. But Shannon Dawson does bring in an air raid system, so that could work with him and with Van Dyke and his big arm, especially when you look at receivers, Colby Young and Xavier Restrepo. They could have a good season there, but the offensive line is what really has to improve for Miami. I would expect it to get a little bit better at the least with Cristobal as the head coach. I'm pretty sure he was an offensive lineman. He's
Yes.
definitely one of the best offensive line developers in the country. So it should get at least a little bit better, but I still think Miami has a bunch of stuff to work on, especially on that defensive side of the ball.
Agree. And that's why I'm going to have Miami at number 8. I think that Miami, they have a lot of talent. They have a lot of talent, and they should be a good team. But last year did not give me a lot of hope. And I think Cristobal will be better. But right now, while we're going into the spring, I'm just not a big fan of Miami. I think Cristobal did a lot worse than people are saying that he did. And I think that is something that needs to be addressed, is that Cristobal did not have a great season, and everybody is acting like, oh, he'll be fine this year. He did not show me that he's going to be fine this year. So that is who I have at number 8. Who do you have at number 8, Lincoln?
Yeah, so at number 8, gosh, where'd it go? I have Wake Forest. So they lost Sam Hartman. They do have Mitch Griffiths, and they have one of the better receiving cores in the ACC, but they do have to replace 3 starters on the offensive line that already wasn't very good. Also, that defense is just awful. I would expect it to get a little bit better, but I don't know how much better it's going to get. So those are just, in my opinion, the big problems that I have with Wake Forest. I just don't see them really getting better at the positions that they need to get better at, and obviously they're getting worse at the most important position. So I'm interested to see what they're gonna look like without Sam Hartman, but I don't think it's going to be very good.
Yeah, agree with you there. Again, I'm gonna at number 7 kind of follow kind of what you said. One rank ahead, but Wake Forest will be my number 7 team. They are just kind of a team that I think Dave Clawson can play, or is a good coach and can get another quarterback, but until it's proven, at the moment, I'm not going to hop on the bandwagon and just see where it goes. So we'll see. It may be a good team. It may be able to survive as a program, but right now they lost Sam Hartman, so they're not going to be very high on my rankings.
Yeah, I agree. You just can't put them up any higher because of that. And so at number 7 for me, I have the Pitt Panthers. Like we talked about on offense, they bring in Dracovic. Um, they lose Abanikanda. They don't really have a lot of weapons. They also lose their best receiver, Jared Wayne, to the NFL. But when I think of Pitt, they're always that team that just finds a way to get it done offensively. They just find a way, like we saw last year. Slovis is not that good of a quarterback. Abanikanda was not that highly rated as a running back coming in, but they just found a way to do something. And the defense, like you mentioned, is always going to be good. For the most part, it's almost always good, but they do lose Kalijah Cansey on the D line, Servicia Dennis and Eric Hallett at linebacker and safety. So those are some big losses as well. But I do expect Narduzzi to do a good job coaching this group and to have them as a solid team here in the ACC.
Yeah, at number 6, I will have the the Louisville Cardinals at number 6. I think that Louisville, I really do like the Jeff Brom hire. I think that the Scott Satterfield era and the experiment that had was not really a good era for Louisville. I think that being able to bring in Jeff Brom, I think you upgraded a head coach, even though Scott Satterfield technically left to go to Cincinnati. So, yeah, I think he upgraded a head coach, and that's why I have Louisville, even though they have not proved anything on the football field with Jeff Brom. I think that he's a good coach, so I have him at number 6.
I agree. I have Louisville at number 6 as well. And kind of for the same reason as you, I don't see a ton of talent on this team or a ton of playmakers really, but I think Jeff Brom is just such a good head coach. That's why I have them above some of these other teams, because I think they have just as many question marks as some of these other teams. But I think with Jeff Brom at head coach, they're a lot better prepared to deal with them.
Yeah. So at number 4 for me, I have the NC State Wolfpack. Your favorite
number 5, right?
Or number 4. Number 5. I'm sorry. Yeah, number 5. At number 5, we have your favorite coach, Dave Doran, and his Wolfpack. Obviously, I'm being very sarcastic in that. But I think that overall, the Wolfpack, you lose Devin Leary to the Kentucky. I think that it kind of just depends all on the quarterback position. NC State has a good team, but the quarterback position is the most important position in football and really in any sport. So it kind of depends on what you see from the quarterback position. It could be good, it could be bad. It kind of depends.
I agree. And at number 5, I also have NC State. And for the exact same reasons, it all comes down to which Brendan Armstrong do we get? Maybe do we get MJ Morris or Ben Finley? I doubt it. I think it's going to be Armstrong. But what Armstrong do you get? Do you get the Brendan Armstrong from last year, or do you get the 2021 Brendan Armstrong that led the country in passing yards and passing touchdowns, I believe? Which one do you get? That's the biggest thing. And you also, you gotta get better at receiver, because you lose Thayer Thomas and Devin Carter, your 2 best receivers from last year. So you got to make up for that. So what does NC State do? So that'll be one thing to watch as we go into this spring and into summer.
Though, to be fair to them, they should have a good linebacking core, as all those good linebackers did come back. So
yes,
that is one point that I do want to add that I forgot to say when I was talking. At number 4, I am going to have the North Carolina Tar Heels. So they are going to be the second best team in the state of North Carolina this year for football. I think that North Carolina is a good team. I think Drake May is a good quarterback, but I think that their defense was so atrociously bad last year that I really cannot put them at that number 3 position or at that number 2 position, because that defense was utter garbage. So maybe it will get better. It probably will get better, but how much is the key to that answer?
Yeah, and so I'm going to go with my number 4 team. I'm going with Duke. I was kind of debating on Duke or North Carolina who to go with, but I'm going with Duke here. They returned 9 starters on offense. They bring in they bring in 9 returning starters. But the defensive side of the ball is kind of where I'm a little nervous about. They have to replace linebacker Shaka Hayward and defensive backs Darius Joyner and Detron Young. So that will be a tall task for Duke for sure. But they have everything they need on the offensive side of the ball. They got playmakers at receiver. They got a quarterback. They got a running back, a solid line. They got all you need on that side of the ball. So I think Duke could be a scary team. And hey, Clemson, they start out the season at Duke. If they don't come at least, if they come out pretty bad in that game, they may end up losing, because they might get down in a hole too deep to climb out of if Duke comes out on fire and Clemson doesn't come out too sharp.
Yeah.
That's not going to be one like it's been in past years where you just walk in there and just tear them to pieces. You're going to have to actually – I mean, it's probably going to be a game for 2.5 quarters.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're
Defense,
going to create some fireworks
that's
here.
really good.
At number 3, I'm going to have the Clemson Tigers. I think that Clemson, here's the biggest question mark, is how is their offense going to compete? How is Cade Klubnik going to play? And, well, I got to create some fireworks for this spring show. You got to have something interesting. So I have the Tigers at number 3. I'll let Lincoln talk because I'm sure I'll have something after to say.
I'll share my thing with Clemson whenever I get to them.
Okay. Well, I'll add a little bit more after that, but really with the Tigers, I think that you have a team that has underperformed offensively. Defensively, they've been good, but you do lose a lot of key pieces. You lose both Murphy and Brissy. You lose Trenton Simpson, but the secondary should be better. But the front seven should be a little bit worse this year with the
Yeah, the whole
losses.
secondary's back.
Yes. Yeah. But if you want to say your number 3 team.
So for my number 3 team, I went back and forth slightly, just because I'm not sure how good either team's defense is going to be for the most part. But I'm going with North Carolina at number 3. They have everything on the offensive side of the ball. They got Drake May. They have Chip Lindsey coming in as the new play caller for them, and Josh Downs is off to the NFL. So now they have to, kind of find that new receiver. But I think that Drake May is good enough that even without a go-to like Josh Downs, that they're still good enough to be the number 3 or 4 team in the ACC. I've kind of went back and forth with them and Duke, but I do think that North Carolina's defense is probably going to be just a little bit better, I would imagine. And I think their quarterback play will be a little bit better too, which is what led me into putting them over Duke. But the offensive line and the defense, the biggest concern for North Carolina. They got to get that stuff figured out if they want to have a successful season and do something with this year.
So at number 2, I have the Duke Blue Devils, basically for all the reasons that you just addressed when you talked about Duke earlier. The quarterback play, Riley Leonard looked fantastic last year. You have a good offensive line. Your receivers are back. Your running back's back. You do have some pieces to replace on defense, but you also have some guys that are returning. So really, I think that with this Duke team, with Elko at the helm, I really don't see any reason for a sophomore slump there for Elko. And I think that you look at a team that, just looks more consistent than the Tigers did last year. And you get Clemson at home and at the beginning of the season, which is exactly when you want Clemson before Garrett Riley can really implement any of that offensive stuff, or I should say make adjustments to the implementations that he made this offseason. So that is the reason why I'm going to have Duke a little bit ahead of Clemson, is partly because I think they could beat Clemson at the beginning of the year because of the situation that you have.
So my number 2 team, I'm going to go with Florida State at number 2. I think that, they're taking some steps forward, but I still think that they're not quite to that point yet. They have a guy like Jordan Travis at quarterback. They have Trey Benson at running back. They bring in Jaheim Bell from South Carolina. They have Johnny Wilson at wide receiver, and 8 returning starters on that offense. They have 9 starters back on defense. They do lose Jamie Robinson and defensive tackle Robert Cooper, but they were 11th in the ACC last year against the run, and I don't like that stat at all for them. I feel like teams are still going to be able to run all over them. The defensive line is just nowhere near elite. The offensive line is still has a good bit of improvement, and the biggest thing is at receiver for Florida State. Other than Johnny Wilson, they're a little slim over there. You just got to shut Johnny Wilson down and make other guys beat you. And that's what Clemson really did last year whenever they went down to Tallahassee. And that's another reason why I do have Clemson over Florida State, is that this year Florida State has to play at Clemson, and kind of like what you're talking about with Duke in Clemson. I think by the time Clemson gets Florida State, they're gonna be pushed a little bit by Duke in that week 1 game, so they're gonna have a little bit of competitive games, but they're also going to have some time to implement the offense under Garrett Riley and kind of work out the kinks. But by the time they get to Florida State in Death Valley.
Yeah. And at number 1 overall, I think you guys have all guessed it. I have Florida State. I think that Florida State is the best team in the ACC going into this spring for the simple reason that they've proven more than any other team in this conference that they can win it going into this year. Clemson just simply has to prove it to me. It's what I've been saying these past 2 years.
I don't know how Florida State's proven it more than – I mean, Clemson won the league last year and beat Florida State.
Well,
I don't see your point of Florida State have proven that they can win the league. I mean, I think that Clemson and Florida State probably rematch for the championship. But I don't see the point of Florida State's proven that they can win the league because they haven't won the league in a while and they lost to Clemson last year.
I get what you're saying, but what I'm saying is this. I think that going into this year, you're not going to have the same defensive pieces that you had last year. And being able to have that, I think that Florida State, you have a quarterback that is a proven commodity, which is something that Clemson has not had since Trevor Lawrence. And I think Jordan Travis is going to be able to take a next step into being not only a good quarterback, not only a great quarterback, but an elite quarterback. And that's something that is going to be critical in a possible ACC title match, in which that is going to be the determining factor. It's something that all of Clemson opponents really did not have outside of maybe, if you want to say Mitch Trubisky was a good quarterback or an elite quarterback, but I would even argue not really, because Clemson has just not faced an elite quarterback in the ACC championship game pretty much the whole time that they've had this kind of dynasty in the ACC. And I think that this team, they got to prove it to me offensively that they're going to be able to beat Florida State. I think that they have the ability to win this game, but I think that I'm going to have Florida State just a little bit ahead because I do think also Clemson has a much tougher schedule with having to play Duke at the beginning of the season. You have Florida State, you have South Carolina, and you have Notre Dame. So it's going to be a much tougher schedule than Florida State. You do have to play LSU at the beginning of the season, but outside of that, you do not have any of your other tough matchups unless if Miami starts to get really good.
Yeah, so number 1 for me, I have Clemson. They bring in Garrett Riley. They bring in a good bit of returning starters as well. They also bring in a lot of – I think the biggest thing is they bring in a lot of good recruits at receiver. They're going to have Adam Randall healthy to go along with Antonio Williams. Also, guys like Blake Miller are going to develop even more as he's now moving into his second year in the program. And the defense is going to be fine. Obviously, they lose Miles Murphy, which is a big loss. I don't think Brian Brzez's that big of a loss. I mean, he barely played last season. He was barely in the games whenever he did play. I don't believe he even played at Florida State in that game either. I don't think he was there for that one. I think that was still whenever he was out with kidney infections. In all the biggest games of the year last year, Brian Brzez barely played or was not a big factor. I know against NC State he was out. Florida State he was out. I think South Carolina, he was only coming in for like a few third downs and punt team. But Clemson gets back a lot of guys that they weren't expecting to get back. They have one of the best linebacking corps in the country, headlined by Barrett Carter and Jeremiah Trotter, who was a first-team All-American last year. He's a guy who's I've seen in early 2024 mock drafts as a guy projected to go in the top 10, top 15 of next year's draft. Kind of an Isaiah Simmons type guy. So then you return the entire secondary. So I think Clemson is going to have a very good year this year. And I think they're going to get back to where they've been.
Yeah, so that is going to wrap up today's ACC football spring preview. Make sure that you go ahead and hit that subscribe button to both this channel and American Football Network, as well as my channel in Chicago Sports. So that's going to wrap it up today with me, Reichly, and American Football Network. So as always, we will see you guys next time.
See y'all. Appreciate y'all.